you. Okay, I see Assemblymember Harkey out there.
Chairman, would it be possible to reopen the call on the part one we did a while ago? I missed that vote.
So you've actually missed a couple of them. We're going to reopen them all. So.
Hi, how are you?
Because he still has 1%.
I'm doing well.
Yeah. Besides that, we still have one for you to present, Doug.
Mr. Chair and members, I'm requesting an audit of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. This is not the first audit. It is probably the second. There were deficiencies noted in both of the previous audits that the state auditor noted in her reports. Items that were requested that haven't been supplied. Mostly there was reporting, tracking, invoices, etc. So to the extent possible, I think since we appropriated in essence $7.2 billion recently and $8 billion for the initial phase of high-speed rail, including the bookends, with a 5-year really continuous appropriation with very little no legislative oversight, merely just reports to the legislature, that we ought to start off on a firm footing to be sure that when the dollars start rolling out that we actually know where it's going and know that they have the systems in place. So to the extent possible, I want to know, does the authority's procedure for selecting design build contractors abide by applicable laws and best practices? What roles does the programs manager, which is Parsons, play in decision-making process and drafting contract language? Is the role appropriate? And does it serve the state's best interest? Number 2, has the authority adequately identified project risks, taken appropriate and reasonable steps to transfer risks to the design-build contractors? We have requested a risk analysis since I first came to this assembly, which is back in 2008. We have not really had a risk manager in place or received a complete risk analysis of where we were then, where we've been, and this is now the 4th revised of the revised plan that we've received and we funded upon. Evaluate the qualifications and preparedness of the management team to oversee a program of this magnitude. So has the authority sufficiently addressed previous deficiencies that were identified by the state auditor? And there were numerous, which were many of the same questions that we had for the previous audits. For the period covered by this audit, did the authority implement adequate processes for monitoring the performance, accountability of its contractors? Does the authority have adequate systems and controls in place for reviewing and verifying invoices? They did not as of the last audit. Does the authority have adequate systems in place for tracking expenditures? Has the authority created an accurate long-term spending plan? They had not. Based on invoices, expenditures, contract decisions, modifications, status of deliverables, and inflation, do cost and time projections presented in the revised 2012 business plan continue to appear reasonable and accurate? If not, can the state auditor provide updated cost and time estimates? Does the authority adequately address mitigation potential conflicts of interest of staff and contractors? On June 8th, the authority's board voted to hire program managers, a senior vice president of strategic initiatives and government relations as its new executive director. This person, as you know, is Mr. Morales. Has the authority adequately identified and mitigated all potential conflicts of interest arising from the executive director's former employment? For the period covered by this audit, what role did the program manager play in making strategy and management decisions on behalf of the state? Did the authority exercise an appropriate level of oversight? Were the program manager's monthly progress reports accurate and up to date? Does the board exercise appropriate oversight over staff decisions? And to identify any variations in the budget or schedule, and are the variations adequately explained? Pursuant to SB 1029 that was approved by the legislature on July 6, has the authority developed an accountability plan that's consistent with the executive order? Does the plan establish adequate criteria governing the expenditure of funds and include detailed project descriptions and associated costs? Has the authority contracted with the Office of State Audits in evaluations for ongoing monitoring of expenditures? Has the authority taken steps to prepare staff management report, risk management reports, project update reports, greenhouse gas reports that are consistent with the statutory requirements? Has the authority taken reasonable steps to fill positions of risk manager, chief program manager, and chief financial officer? This is one of the largest, potentially largest state infrastructure projects that we are embarking upon. You know, my objection has always been with regard to where we're going to continue getting the funding from, how we're going to pay for it, are we qualified under Prop 1A, which was what the voters approved. Those are all still reasonable questions, but this goes a bit further. Since the legislature determined to appropriate this and the funds are not yet out the door, I think we need to set up procedures in place and be sure that we have an audit trail, because at least if they're not going to come back to us for 5 years and ask for money, at least we hope they won't ask for any more money in 5 years, but they've got 5 years to burn through $8 billion and to somehow find some match funding. And in fact, another thing that I don't think was brought up, or that you're aware, I mean, if these bookend projects have to be match funded by the locals, the monies will be under the High-Speed Rail Authority for administration. So I think it's very, very important that they have tracking and records, and that we know, and through a state audit, what we're getting, what they still lack, so that we can help them to move forward since the decision has been made. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First objective is looking at, as Assemblymember Harkey indicated, we've issued 2 audit reports on the High-Speed Rail Authority. The first audit report was issued in April of 2010, and then we conducted some follow-up work in the fall of 2011, issued a report in 2012, which not only encompassed looking at the status of the recommendations that we had made in our 2010 report, but also looking at a revised business plan at that point in time. Subsequent to our report, as I'm sure you're aware, the High-Speed Rail Authority has now published another revised business plan as of April of 2012. But what this first objective would be about is, in that 2012 audit report, we have a grid that shows recommendations from the 2010 report and new recommendations. So this first objective would be assessing the status of implementation of all of those recommendations that we made. And these recommendations were relative to things that Assemblymember Harkey indicated: risk management, monitoring of contractors, tracking expenditures, mitigating risk, establishing a good conflict of interest policy. Those types of things were all issues we identified in both of our audit reports, and are things we will continue to follow up on with respect to the recommendations that we've made to the authority. In addition to that, she and Senator LaMalfa is also on this request, are asking us to look at the qualifications and experience of the management team at the High-Speed Rail Authority in determining whether or not that it's the appropriate expertise and qualifications to oversee a program of this magnitude. I think we would look at what their process was for identifying who their team members needed to be and how they're going about recruiting and trying to get additional individuals onto the authority's team. With respect to the revised business plan, attempting to determine whether the cost and time projections presented in that plan continue to be reasonable and accurate, and we would base that on looking at progress reports coming in from regional contractors, looking at their monitoring of their business plan and whether or not they are able to stay on task as far as the time and cost relative to that revised plan that was published in April of 2012. Also, looking at the program manager, this is something that we talked about again in our 2010 and 2012 report, where the High-Speed Rail Authority relies very heavily on its program manager, which is Parsons Brinkerhoff, a consultant that they've hired. And what Assemblymember Harkey and Senator LaMalfa are interested in knowing is what the role of that program manager is in strategy management decisions, specifically with respect to the design-build decisions that will be happening over the course of the next year or so, I would presume. But certainly they're interested in us understanding and hopefully conveying to the legislature the role of the program manager in some of those decisions as far as who the authority hires for the design-build phase of the project. Another objective is the authority's board, and what authority or oversight is the board itself exercising over staffing decisions, management decisions, etc. And then with respect to SB 1029, which my understanding went into effect in July of this year, a variety of things are included in that legislation, specifically requiring the authority to come up with an accountability plan that lays out criteria and very specific requirements with respect to expenditures, program descriptions, etc. So the senator and the assembly member would like us to look at, has that plan been put in place and how robust is that particular plan? As Assemblymember Harkey indicated, one other requirement is that the authority contract with the Department of Finance, their audit shop, to require that audit shop to review, I would presume, on a periodic basis, expenditures. So we would look to see if that's happened, look at the scope of the contract with Finance. The last two objectives: has the authority taken steps to prepare the staff management report? Risk management plan is something that we identified as something that was lacking in both the 2010 and the 2012 audit reports we put out. The authority, as they've indicated in both those audits and some of the follow-up, is they're anxious to hire a risk manager who will help develop that plan. But we would ask about that, ask about other reports that are required as part of SB 1029. And then finally, has the authority taken reasonable steps to try to fill some of those key positions that have been vacant for a long time? The risk manager position, the chief financial officer, a program manager, and other key executive positions. The budget for the audit is about 2,300 hours. We've been down this road before, so we're very familiar with a lot of their practices. So I think that's why we believe we could conduct the audit and get it done within that amount of time.
Okay, at this time I'd like to invite affected agencies, members of the public, to come up and make comment.
Affected.
Hope you're not going to comment on that entire stack of pages. On that
It's double-sided.
yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Mr. Chairman, Jeff Morales, Executive Director of the High-Speed Rail Authority. I'm accompanied by Tom Falens, our General Counsel, and Becky McAllister with our Internal Audits Group. Just a few comments. I'd be happy to take any questions or comments. First, I want to underscore that we understand and appreciate the importance of oversight in any program, and certainly in a program of this size and magnitude. We also recognize past issues have certainly caused concerns and previous audits, and we will absolutely comply fully with any audit that comes out of this process or any other. We do have an ongoing audit that has been mentioned. In fact, we just on Friday submitted our 6-month update. I would note it's the first update under the new management of the authority, and I will obviously let Ms. Howell determine for herself, but I think I'm optimistic she'll find that it goes much further in terms of addressing the issues that the BSA has raised and cited before, and we're very aggressively taking those on. We as a program have numerous reviews, both at the state and the federal levels, of our various aspects of our program, and numerous reporting requirements. There was a letter sent to the committee by our board chair, Dan Richard, which summarized those reports, and the stack here is a sample of some of the reporting requirements that we have currently and the reports that we submit, again, to both federal and state agencies in response to those. As was mentioned, SB 1029, which was enacted about 3 weeks ago, includes significant new reporting requirements, all geared toward providing the legislature with the tools necessary to conduct oversight of the program as we move forward. Obviously, we have not yet submitted any of those reports. The law was only signed 3 weeks ago, but we have the first of those will be due this fall, and we will submit those on time. I would note, with regard to the request letter, there are 11 questions, some of them with multiple parts to them, but each of the 11 either has been, is being, or will be looked at through various mechanisms, either the ongoing BSA audit, which is ongoing, I would point out, GAO review, LAO, the legislative peer review group, other mechanisms, all of whom are looking at this. And lastly, I would just say that we are absolutely committed to being open and transparent in moving forward with the program and in providing you with the legislature and others with the tools necessary for oversight and ongoing decisions. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything you want to add? No? At this time. Any other comments from the public? All right. Questions from the members? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, to the author of the request, my apologies for not being here for your entire presentation. My question does go to the auditor, though. In our recent budget process, SB 1029, we did pass new authority and new obligations for high-speed rail. Does your analysis make a comparison, or do you have a sense of what we've already required that would meet some of the objectives, if not all the objectives, of this audit request?
We haven't done that type of analysis. The analysis that we have done is in looking at the two audits that we've already conducted and lining it up with the request. And there's much that we have done, and that's why we have the one objective to follow up on recommendations that we've made in those two previous reports. But we haven't done an analysis of SB 1029 and comparing that to prior requirements that have been put on the authority.
Thank you. And I guess my cause for hesitation on this is because we have just recently passed language to require some of what I think is included in this request, and because we're in this time of transition, my concern is I think we need a little more time before some of the elements in this audit would be timely. So, but Ms. Harkey, if you'd like to address that concern, I just wanted to kind of express my thanks for your continued vigilance on this, but that I will probably not be joining in the request today.
Okay, I would understand. However, I think what the members are unaware of, or maybe have overlooked, is that we passed on authority to the administration. The legislature does not have authority to really, we get reports. We don't have a review process in SB 129 for 5 years. Or SB 1029, excuse me, for 5 years. So the fact that you think you're going to get reports, you're not entitled to them. You will get reports, but you will not have any say in how this is done. We've assigned the $8 billion and the administration thereof. The legislature has granted to the administration. So, hence the continuance of the audit. I've been involved in this since 2008, and each time we had an audit, we did not get the responses that we need, or there were items missing, and quite a few. And we're dealing with a large project and a lot of money here. Now, we have a new management team. But that being said, they're improving. Things are improving, but we still don't know a lot of information. And I would think, as a legislature, on a project this size that has had this much scrutiny at the public level, in the newspapers, as well as from the legislature, from members. We had 4 members that did not support this in the Senate, which is kind of unheard of, but the transportation group in the Senate did not, that we need at least some oversight. We were not granted that in SB 1029. So I understand that you might not to be duplicative, but I don't believe our request is duplicative. It is based on a new plan, a fourth revised of a revised, and based on local monies that are going to be match funded. And we have a lot of responsibility here, but we don't have any tools, I guess is what I'm saying. And so an audit is a simple thing. Whether or not the legislature chooses to act on any of the audit issues is another issue, but I think that we at least ought to, for future legislation, since we're going to be flipping in a couple of years, or you're going to be termed out, I'm going to be around, I think, for 2 more. There's going to be a big turnover in the House, and we at least have to start out with a fresh page, with fresh management, and really a new project.
Right. Again, and I appreciate all of that, and I just kind of final comment, because of where we are in the transition and the recent passage, it just seems if we did this a year from now, there would be more. It's such a huge effort by the auditor's office, and I just don't know if it's going to be ripe at this time as it would be a year from now when there's more to learn from. But anyway, that's my view, and I just wanted to share some of my hesitations. Thank you.
Senator Anderson.
I think a year from now we would have more information. If we're going down the wrong track, it'll be more bad information. We have a change of leadership going right now. If we do the audit now, we could look at some of the procedures. We could look at the way they're approaching this, and perhaps we could head it off before we get down the wrong track. So, Assemblywoman, how are you envisioning this thing moving forward? I mean, as you get that data, because this is not the first time in the process. How long? I mean, since we didn't get all the information in past audits, what do you see coming out of this? And I mean, for me, I'd rather have the information up front to make sure we get down the right track. But
I think your point on is that we didn't get it the last time. We had a whole different administration in essence. We had Mr. Van Ark, who has been replaced. We now have Mr. Morales, who is from Parsons but previously with Caltrans. We have a new administration as far as the governor, and we have a new approval for $8 billion for 5 years with no legislative oversight. So I think it's very important that we at least get started on the right track with the new administration and the audit, and continue on where we were with the audit, see if some of this stuff has been brought up to speed, because a lot of the requirements have not changed. We still are lacking in those items, or maybe they have been filled. Mr. Morales has staff to hire. We've been asking for a risk manager for, I think, since 2008. Ms. Buchanan requested risk management. We have not had that. So we need to know where we're starting. And then this is a continuous audit, but I don't believe the ongoing BSA audit is. But this request is not duplicative of that. It is in addition to now that we have authorized $8 billion and we have a new management team. Thank you.
Senator Moffatt.
Chairman, first, thank you, Assemblywoman Harkey, for all your heavy lifting on this effort here and ongoing. I wanted to, I think, emphasize also that with this ever morphing project here, that and then again the huge size and scope of the project here, I would think we would want to have a lot more information going in before ground is broken, which had been this fall to sometime now after the first of the year, if targets are met. That we'd want to know going in much more, and the people of California are demanding it, because 2/3 of the voters out there surveyed are really questioning this process here. So if I could throw a question to Ms. Howell there on, if you could just underline for the committee here, how do you feel that this audit effort would augment and not be maybe there's concern about maybe being early or maybe duplicative, but this is really, I think, augmenting with new information and a new plan. Could you emphasize more how so the committee could be assured?
Sure,
this is a necessary measure, especially before we commit anywhere from $68 billion, all told, long term, to a number that could be far north of that. I think in reality as well, maybe 130 billion. So
right.
I think it's very important.
Sure. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I think a couple of objectives in particular are things that we have not looked at in the past. Certainly the objective where we're going to follow up on recommendations. Some of the objectives related to it's a new business plan that we haven't looked at. We looked at previous business plans. Looking at design build, decision making relative to design build. We certainly have looked at the High Speed Rail Authority's contracting practices in the past, but more specifically to IT type of contracts, smaller contracts, not because they haven't entered into design build. So that would be something that would be new. And clearly SB 1029, the requirements under SB 1029 that took effect just this July are things that we've not looked at because that didn't exist before. So there are 2 or 3 objectives that would be a little bit different than what we've done in the past.
Now, as far as timing, wouldn't it be a plus for you to have this in the pipeline, and so that you can ramp up this segment of it instead of waiting another full year, as these huge expenditures are going to be made? Isn't it a plus for you to be able to start ramping up now and be really in stride by the time the project is moving along much more quickly after the first of the year, et cetera?
Well, I think that's true to an extent, and again, it's an uncomfortable position for me because I don't want to take a position on an audit.
I would rather not put the auditor in that spot. I think that we want the audit for a very good reason. It's that we have a new plan, we've got money, we're going to be entering into large contracts, design-build contracts. We need to understand, or at least be confident, that the contracting practices follow the law and what we want. Things have not been as they should be previously. We do have new management. We have a new plan. We have new monies about to go out the door. So I think it's very important that we follow up on the items that were missing previously and also ensure that practices are in place going forward. And if I were the authority, I would quite honestly want that kind of a buyout. So I request an aye vote for this.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the members? Okay, then we will have comments from the public on this matter. Are there any public comments on this issue? Okay, I just wanted to say, Senator Harkey, I really do admire your work on this issue, and I actually agree with you with a lot of the stuff that's been done in the past, and I share your sentiment in that. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support this audit just because I think it's a little bit premature. I know we just passed SB 1029. I think we got to let that roll out and make sure, given the new provisions, that we as we move forward, that we have the safeguards that we need. But, in no disrespect to the work you've done and to how passionate you've been on this issue, because quite frankly, I think, now with the new management, with the new team, that we can, move forward on this project. And, I do share your concerns of the past, lack of responsiveness of the agency. And so, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support your audit request, but I will entertain a motion and a second. There's a motion by Senator Norby, second by Senator Malfa. Secretary, please call the roll.
Lara?
No.
Lara, no. Alejo? No. Alejo, no. Donnelly?
Aye.
Donnelly, aye. Monning? No. Monning, no. Norby?
Aye.
Norby, aye. Pan? Smythe? Alquist? No. Alquist, no. Anderson?
Aye.
Anderson, aye. DeLeon? Dutton?
Aye.
Dutton, aye. LaMalfa?
Aye.
LaMalfa, aye. Rubio? Walk.
This item's on call. Senator Harkey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've promoted me.
Oh, Senator Harkey.
I've won the election already.
Yes.